Where's my roster?
All right, I'll go ahead and start. The Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is convening at 9:07 a.m. Oh,
hold on.
It's okay.
Okay, we're recording. Go ahead now.
Okay. The Sexual Offense Treatment Board is convening at 9:08 a.m. on November 12th, 2021 at the Health Licensing Office in Salem, Oregon by telephone conference call. I'll now call roll. Kelly Chimenti here. Michelle Rowland Schwartz.
Here.
Kelly Crane.
Here.
Joe Ferguson.
Here.
Malcolm McDonald.
Here.
William Davis.
Here.
Jeremy Howell.
Here.
Members, when you wish to speak, please state your last name for the record. For the record, public members calling into the public phone line are asked to email April Fleming at april.fleming@dhsoha.state.or.us and provide your first and last name. Public and interested parties' feedback may be heard during the public interested parties' feedback period if indicated on the agenda. Everyone is asked to use appropriate language, manners, and protocols when conducting board business. The meeting is called to order.
Okay, thank you. Again, I apologize for us being late. My login was not working, so I might show up as Ann. So first thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
This is Crane. Is it possible to add just one note for just announcements, if folks have announcements?
Other board business?
Probably other board business. It's too late to.
Yeah, we can do it under other board business, last item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
So we need a motion for approval of the agenda.
This is Michelle.
I can't find, sorry.
I was just say this is Michelle Rowland Schwartz. I'll make a motion to approve.
Davis or Rowland Schwartz?
Schwartz.
This is Malcolm. I second the motion.
Okay, I
Kelly,
will.
you want to call a roll, please?
Yes. Kelly Chimenti, aye. Michelle Rowland, well, wait. Kelly Crane.
Aye.
Joe Ferguson.
Aye.
William Davis.
Aye.
Jeremy Howell.
Aye.
The motion is passed. The agenda has been approved.
All right. So then we have, the next item is meeting dates. So it looks like we have May 13 and November 4th.
This is Crane. The November 4th meeting date is the meeting date for the OSOTN board meeting, which will be a conflict for Jeremy and myself.
Okay. We're checking the calendar. If that's the 11th, that would be, I think, a holiday.
Okay. And what about the previous one?
That would be in October.
Is that available?
The week before in October, the end of October, work for everybody?
That'd be the 28th.
Thank you.
October 28th.
Does anybody know what this is Howell, does anybody know what the dates are for OAT's conference? They usually hold it at the end of October.
At the conference. I could look that up. I think it's early October this year. I'll look it up.
And we're double checking our Outlook calendar here too. Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, that is during the ATSA conference in 2022. The conference is 26th through 29th of October.
So look like they're busy.
What about November? Can you click on November 18th? Yes. What about November 18th? November 18th.
That could,
How's that?
Seeing some nods.
Okay, so May 13th and November 18th. If that works, we need a motion and a second and a vote. A roll call.
So
This is
if
Crane. Sorry.
This is Bob. I was just gonna say if May 13 and November 18th work, then we need someone to make a motion, please, and a second.
This is Crane. I move that we adopt May 13th and November 18th for the SOTB meetings dates for 2022.
This is Michelle, I second.
okay, I'll call roll. Kelly Chimenti, aye. Joe Ferguson,
Aye.
Malcolm McDonald,
Aye.
William Davis,
Aye.
Jeremy Howell.
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Meeting dates are
Right.
set.
Very good. Next thing is on the agenda is approval of the 2022 chair and vice chair. So Kelly has served as chair and Michelle was vice chair through 2021, and we need to nominate both for 2022. Basically what the role is for the chair is to call the meeting to order, keep order, impose any necessary restrictions for the efficient and orderly conduct of the meeting, direct the flow of the meeting, ensure the meeting is conducted in a professional manner. Some key points regarding meeting protocol include, but are not limited to, board members wishing to speak must wait to be addressed by the chair. Once addressed by the chair, the board members must state their names, last name. For the record before speaking, the chair guides members through the motion-making process. Of course, with the help of HLO, we'll get everybody through this. Public comment is being accepted by the board. Audience members must wait to be addressed by the chair and state their full name and affiliation to the board. And officially enter and exit executive sessions and adjourning the meeting officially. Other roles include collaboration with the director regarding the board budget, and the director may contact the chair to discuss board budget regarding revenue, expenditures, possible fee changes, assist in generating meeting agendas. Board specialists or analysts may contact the chair to discuss the agenda for an upcoming meeting. The chair may be asked to comment on topics to be discussed and the format or order in which the topics could be presented at the meeting. Role of the vice chair is to assume responsibility of the chair in case there's an absence. In case you didn't notice, I had to read it. I don't have it all memorized yet. So it looks like Kelly is unable to, excuse me. Oh, she's on her second full term. So her term ends, looks like January 31. And Michelle can't, her term, second term ends March 31 of 22. I'm sorry? So we need both new chair and vice chair. So It's open for discussion.
This is Malcolm. I'm willing to do either.
Nice. Anybody else interested?
Joe? Bill?
Well, I think if you're,
If Malcolm does the chair, I will do the vice chair.
And who's that?
Joe Ferguson.
Okay.
sweet.
So we need a
Question.
motion? Huh? More discussion?
Can I make a motion or no?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
Oh, who was that?
No, that's the chair.
Is that
This
Kelly?
is Chimenti,
No.
yeah.
I'm sorry, you cannot.
Okay. Okay, I didn't think I could, but I wasn't sure.
Can I?
This is
Go ahead,
Crane.
Kelly.
Okay, this is Crane. I move to appoint Malcolm McDonald as chair and Joe Ferguson as vice chair of the SOTB board.
Need a second.
I'll second. Michelle.
Okay,
Kelly?
we'll take roll. Kelly Chimenti, aye. Joe Ferguson,
Aye.
Malcolm McDonald,
Aye.
William Davis,
Aye.
Jeremy Howell.
Aye.
All right, the motion has passed. Congratulations, gentlemen. Thank you for your service.
Yes, thank you all. So is there any other questions
is-
about, on this, I'm sorry, this is Bob.
Go ahead.
Any other questions about tenure on the board? Everybody have a
Yeah,
good-
I think we had a question before you joined too. How many terms can a member serve?
2 full terms, I believe.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Chimenti. So do I need to find a replacement then for myself?
You don't have to, however, if you know someone.
No, they're appointed to the right
Oh.
organizations.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. They're appointed, you're all appointed by the different organizations, OATSA and OSOTN. So, yeah, you
So
don't have to find
someone
anybody,
needs-
Kelly.
Okay, but okay, so this will be my last meeting though, right? Because I can't re-up.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
And
I'll miss
actually, it might be
everyone.
Michelle's too, since we don't have one until May.
It is. And I'm
Mm.
happy to help recruit. I know that Bree, my predecessor, encouraged me to apply, and so I'm happy to help with recruiting if that's necessary.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. And that goes for any of you on the different organizations you belong to. You know, if you know somebody that's interested, or put it out there that we're looking, and the boards
Mhm.
can make the recommendations.
It may be helpful for a reminder when our second term would end, let alone our first, but
Mm.
Let's see. So it looks like Joe's second full term. Is that right, Joe? Ends in 23.
Yes.
And John K. Woods is August of 23. Jeremy's.
He's.
Go ahead.
This is Chimenti. Bill Davis took John K. Wood's spot, so.
Oh, that's right. I'm looking at the wrong. This thing is very small. Anyway, you're correct. Thank you for the correction. So Bill
Sure.
is going to be around until August of 23. Jeremy, October of 24. And Joe's till July of 23. And Malcolm doesn't look like it's updated. It's got the wrong date. It says 12/5 of 21. Is that correct, Malcolm? That'd be your first full. So,
Yeah.
okay.
This is Chimenti. He can re-up for a second term, correct?
Yes. Oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll re-up.
So Jeremy can, Bill can, Kelly can, and Malcolm can. Correct. All right.
This is Chimenti. I have a different issue. On the scripts, I didn't get the leaving executive or going into executive session. I didn't get and going into and coming out of executive session scripts. I did not get those. I have the call to order,
Yeah.
the interested
Bob.
parties back in the adjourn.
Correct. Yeah, this is Bob. There at one point there was going to be an executive session to review cases, and then I asked for it to be pulled after getting the reports and reviewing the caseload, the case information, and we need to do a little bit more legwork. But nonetheless, we'll probably have 5 or 6 to review, May or if not before, just to not make May an all-day event.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the director's report. What we have, so we've been given the, what the hell's the name of that board? Genetic counselors program. So we've taken that on, and we're diligently putting that together. And that was just about it, I think. And then COVID, other than what we see on the news, we're still closed to the public here at the office until January 4 at this point, subject to change, of course. But other than that, any questions with regards to COVID and what else is happening in the office with the new board coming on or anything? Good. Thank you. So the next couple slides will be your licensing, fiscal, and statistical reports. So it looks like the clinical therapists look like they were staying pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So, and as you all know, our quarters run a little differently, July to June instead of January to December. So every 3 months from July 1. The next slide is the associate therapists. So at the end of fiscal 21, looks like it grew by a couple. And so just so everybody knows, it's not that just because we had 3 in quarter 4 and 1 in quarter 1 license doesn't mean we lost anybody. It's just it's just what was issued in that quarter.
This is Chimenti, so those are new ones, new certifications.
Correct.
Okay.
Kelly Crane has her hand up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kelly.
That's okay. I took it down. I was going to see if you're going to put this on the screen, but I just went to another screen to view it. So I'm
Oh,
good.
got it?
Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
And I'm not on my login. I'm on somebody else's, so I don't want to get in their email to pull it up. So the secondary clinical therapists have had some activity also in the last couple of quarters.
Yeah, this is Chimenti. I'm pleasantly surprised at how that there's 14 of those. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And then that'll change because on the next slide, interns.
Mm-hmm.
Got a total of 12.
Great too.
And then the next slide are the renewals. And it does show both online and paper. Total of 75.
Nice.
Renewal for the clinical therapists. And we've only had them renew on paper. Total of 6. And the interns are doing paper only as well. We've had 2 renewals.
Right.
Next slide are licensees by age, gender, and all license types. So it's looks like it's pretty healthy. Total of 109 licensees.
Yeah.
Got 5 of them, 74 to 81. So the bulk is down in the 34-41 range, and that's years of age. Any questions on those before we go into the licensing trends? So for the clinical therapists, it's pretty steady in the mid to low 70s range. And why there's a dip, I'm not sure. But fiscal Q3 of 21.
It might have been some of the
grandfathers.
grandfathered
Yeah.
people were out.
Yeah, that could be some of the grandfathering folks that were licensed were no longer licensed, or got licensed other ways. But that was just a couple of them that we lost, and then we gained 2 back. Secondary clinical therapists, an increase, as well as the therapist interns, all moving upwards.
Yay.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope so, since we started with 0.
Right?
There's nowhere to go but up.
No. Hey, at that point, there's nowhere to go but up.
Exactly.
So the next slide, and I can't tell you what number it is, but the next slide are your financials. Oh, did I forget the map? Oh, I didn't flip it over. The next slide was the board requested mapping of where the providers were located and where they were not. So,
interesting.
Yes.
This is Howell. I went to look at who was in Coos County and went to the board site, and it says that I need to get a public records request to do that, and I click on that, and it's the page doesn't exist.
I'm sorry, to do what again?
To find out who is in Coos County, the names of the practitioners in Coos County.
Okay. So what this does, this is, hang on, let me ask our IT guy. Is this providers in the specific county or is this their address?
Their address.
Yeah, this is their address.
Okay.
Put their address down on file. They may work in more than one county. This is just the ones that are in.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thanks. So these numbers are addresses where the providers live. So they may reach out into other counties, but it's not specific that there's 3 providers working in Coos County. They could, and there just might be 3 living in Coos County. One could be providing service in Douglas or up in Lincoln.
Okay,
Yes,
but the problem was that I went for the record request form and that form doesn't exist.
For this office?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Chimenti. So when you looked up license, like license finder or something like that, Jeremy, on the website?
I went to the website, to consumer help, to the questions. Can I get a list of the current practitioners in a particular field? And ask for a public records request form, and I click on that, and it doesn't exist.
Was that through through HLO, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to go through the health authority for public records requests, and or you can send Nathan.
You can send it right to my email if you want a list of our practitioners in a specific.
Yeah, you can send Nathan an email directly, Nathan Goldberg.
Okay.
Or April, since you have her email handy, she'll send it to Nathan.
She's not.
This is Chimenti. You can find it on the website. So I just did that search, a license in, let's see, let me go back and see what it's called. But if you go to the SOTB, the OHA SOTB site online, and you go to license inquiry, there are lots of different fields. So you can go to, so the top field, I think, is the board. So obviously you put the, SOTB, and then you can put county. And so what I did is I put the SOTB board, I put active status, and then I went down to the bottom and went to county and clicked on Coos County, and 3 people come up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I put the link in the chat to that search.
And the chat's disabled, sorry. So, yeah,
Because of the public.
Yeah, if you can't find it on our forward-facing website, that's fine.
I
You
got
can
it.
always send Nathan an email or send me an email or Sylvie. We'll get you the information. But typically, public records requests have to go through, we send them up to the health authority when we do receive them. And then it sounds kind of bureaucratic, but they track it for us and they do the dissemination of the information.
One piece, I'm looking at that search, the drop down has it still a sex offender treatment board and not sex offense treatment board. So
Yeah. Something to fix.
Is that elite? Yeah. So that might be the elite program, and we may not be able to change that.
that's fine. It's just in the drop down for the search
Okay.
So
But I'll have Nathan and I'll have our website guru take a look at it, see if they can't change it.
Yeah, that's.
But they pretty much think they've gone through everything and changed what they could. Okay. Any other questions about the map? All right. Financials.
This is Crane. I do have a
Go ahead,
question
Kelly.
about is there any way to, on the renewals or the applications, to ask where people are practicing? And one of the reasons I asked that is like looking at the map and seeing where there's gaps would be helpful to know if those are gaps because there's no one practicing in those counties, or those are gaps because we're not recording that there's someone that's practicing in that county. And if someone wanted to do some, reach out to try to provide services in other counties, it'd be nice to have that information.
Mm-hmm. I will talk to our forums and see if we can't get it on there. I'll talk to Sylvie too.
Great, thank you.
All right. Sounds like we're trying to avoid the financials, even though they look grim. So, but it's improved.
A lot.
Yeah. So I think it will continue to improve, provided we don't have any big cases like we have had in the past. Any questions or concerns? Sylvie's covered this, I don't know how many times, about the allocations and all to, that goes to what we pay for the board. The regulatory report. So, like I said earlier, we've got 5 or 6 cases that are just about ready to come to the board. So a lot of this is going to fall in half, the number of open cases. But from 2019 biennium, there's still 2 open. The 2021, there's 11 open. Any questions, concerns?
If we have complicated cases prior to losing 2 board members, which we're going to lose Chimenti because that's January, but prior to losing Michelle, maybe working on those before that.
Right. So part of the casework is it takes time to retrieve information if we have to send a subpoena out or lawyers get involved. But as soon as we have them together, and yeah, I would like with 2 veteran board members, certainly I could get them to the board as soon as possible. And that was our intention until I got to taking a look at them and thought we probably need to have some questions answered that I know you were going to ask. So, and that required us to do that extra legwork. So if we can pull them together, if the board's a game, we'll get it in front of you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
And you got
This is Crane. This is kind of an aside, but it kind of fits in this topic. I've had so many different practitioners come to me and ask about folks that they know are practicing offense-specific treatment and are not certified. And what should we do? What should we do? And my response has been, well, I think you should talk to them first and let them know that they're supposed to be certified and how they can go about it. And then secondly, I believe the process is you report to their licensing board and then report to SOTB. But what keeps coming back is a question of why SOTB board doesn't reach out to inform people that they need to be certified to do this work. Now, that sounds like a big task to reach out to every therapist, seems ridiculous. But there are, 4 licensing boards for therapists. And I wonder if the SOTB board could send out a notice to like the social work board, the marriage and family counseling board, the psychology board, just a notice to those boards to inform their licensees that there is this requirement to be certified.
Right. Well, first off is, one is their responsibility to know that to take in through education as well as knowing what to do through statutory requirements, should know that it's a requirement to be licensed these days. But I will run it by Sylvie about, we can't let every licensee under all the other boards know, the mental health boards know, but we can certainly talk to those boards to see if they're willing to help us with a little bit of outreach.
And I can help you with something.
And Ann is here too.
Oh, sorry. Good morning, members of the board. Part of Kelly Crane's concerns may be addressed through an FAQ that our contact counsel at the DOJ is currently working on. It was asked in the past, how much SOTB related work can a professional do without having a license, where that border is. And that is something that the DOJ is still working on. When that FAQ comes out, it might offer some more clarity on communications, who needs to be told what and how.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks, Ann.
Okay. Ann, did you have anything for policy?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay. Well, then you're up. Now we'll vacate the chair.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I have to change my real estate here. So we had a couple of things under policy. One, Kelly Crane had mentioned at the last meeting that she was going to attend a conference and would have some notes for all of us. So Kelly, please.
Sorry, I always forget to unmute. So I don't have a lot to say. I attended the sex offense treatment professional training for social workers put on by the International Association of Trauma Professionals. It was an 8-week course worth 24 CEUs that covered, each week had different modules covering from myths and facts all the way through preparing forensic, psychological, sexual evaluations. I felt like it was very heavy towards adult offenders, not very much for those who work with juvenile offenders. There was a lot of stuff there that I felt was superfluous to the work. So I come out of it not recommending it, but also, again, emphasizing, and I think I can speak for the OSOTN board on this, the desire to be more specific about the 60 hours of training that we require people to have in coming into the field, as well as the continuing education, be a little bit more specific to what we feel like people need if they're working with juveniles and if they're working with adults, and what that difference would be. The concern being that someone who's working with adults might start working with juveniles without having an understanding of the difference between the work that's involved with the two, and vice versa. At one point, I think right before the pandemic, this board had talked about convening a work group to work on that, asking OSOTN to come up with a couple of folks that were willing to work on it, which we did, asking OATSA to come up with a couple of folks. I think they were working on that, and then I can't remember what other representation we had requested for that. And then it kind of got dropped by the wayside because of the pandemic, which is understandable. But it would be really, I'd really encourage us to see if we can get that going again. And again, I was hoping that this course would have been something that could help steer that, but it really, I'm happy to share the handouts and stuff, but I didn't see it as being all that helpful for what we have been talking about and looking at those training hours.
This is Chimenti. Kelly, we, the OATSA board, we just had a board retreat at a month or two ago, and we talked about this and finally got some headway on it. And what we kind of decided on or thought about, looked into using was there are ATSA offers a lot of courses through their website that people can take whenever. And there's a lot of different variety of kind of like 101 type courses in juvenile and adult. And so we started looking at those resources, and we've started to put together a list of what would be the basics that of training that we would recommend, or that would be seen as sufficient for those hours, those initial training hours. And so that was just something that one of our board members said, hey, I know there's this resource on the ATSA website, and a lot of us didn't even know it was there. So we started looking at it. We're like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's all right here. So it was kind of useful. So I don't know, maybe you all can look at that too and see what you think about some of those courses for the, to serve this purpose of those initial training hours. Or we could all talk together, our two boards could talk about that, and maybe put together some kind of a document that SOTB could use, or OHA could use to kind of look at.
Thank you, Kelly. This is Ann. That would be extremely useful. Just for clarity's sake, let me remind everybody that I personally made 2 outreaches to the represented groups that the board wanted, including victims advocates, to put that group together. And it wasn't dropped because of the pandemic. It was put on hold because nobody wanted to participate. I could not get the requisite groups represented. So for the record.
So, Ann, so I know that Osoton had 2 people that our board appointed to work on that, and I know Osoton, OATSA was going to have 2, and then there was 1 victim advocate. Was that the 5? Was that the representation, or was there another group?
I would have to go back in my records and look, but I know we could not get a victims advocate.
Okay.
And there were others. I mean, it was a non-starter completely, and I made 2 separate outreaches. So I would have to go back, but the point being, if we can move forward with materials that are already there, maybe that's a more fruitful direction.
Well, that's definitely a nice springboard for that group to look at for sure. And maybe that's the end all too. But I think it would be important for that committee to look and together come up with a recommendation for the SOTB board on what they feel like should be included in those initial 60 hours of training. With the goal, I mean, my own goal, that we may at some point be looking at certifying people working with juveniles versus certifying people working with adults. And of course, there could be people who had dual certification. So that's my thought on it. I think at one point there was a talk of the Osoton group and the OATSA group just meeting outside of SOTB board. And if that, it sounds like Kelly Chimenti saying that that's something that their board would be willing to do. And I believe that's something the folks that on our board that were wanting to be on that committee would do. We could start there if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
We missed out on the representation of like victim advocate and whoever else was there. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Kelly, you have your hand up?
No, I don't know how to put my hand down.
Okay. All right. So if I'm hearing you right, OATSA and Osoton are going to try to look at some of these 101 type courses mentioned by Chimenti to see if you can put together a list of training that perhaps the board could look at, perhaps through the rulemaking process to further define the hours of training required for certification. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Jeremy, do you have any thoughts? Because you're one of the people that Osoton who had volunteered for Osoton. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great. I'd really support that.
Okay,
Great.
okay, great. So
Michelle.
was there anything else under that discussion?
Michelle has.
Oh, Michelle, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to offer, if my term ends in March and you're looking for a victim advocate and this work group has stuff that is scheduled after that time, if it's an option to have me serve in the victim advocate slot, I'd be more than willing to do that.
That's great.
Yay.
Yeah.
And then that way I can hang out with you all a little bit longer.
Yay.
Well, you know, the work group, just to remind everybody, I take you into the juvenile standards Wayback Machine. Members of the board are not going to be on this work group, okay? Because ultimately the board has to vote. So the work group will be totally separate. And I know sometimes we have board members that are a little shocked. They want to get involved in something, and we're like, no, that work group has to be separate from the board. So just remind everybody, but Michelle, that's very generous, and we will keep that in mind when we get to this place. So fantastic.
So at this point, though, we're not actually convening a work group. We're just having those two different boards put some stuff together. Is that correct?
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
This is Chimenti. And can I ask just a clarifying question for what you all need? Because sometimes that gets confusing a little bit. Are you wanting a clear list of take these courses or take these workshops? These are workshops that you have to take in order as part of these 60 initial hours of training, or are you just wanting is whatever we give you, whatever those work groups are that ends up giving information, is it just that these could be part of that initial 60 hours, or what is it that I just want to clarify?
Well, that's up to you. The board was talking about further being more specific, delineating some areas of study that were more specific within that qualifying number of hours that's mentioned in statute. This was something the board wanted. So it would be up to you what that looked like. It's nice to be specific, but I urge caution. If you say, okay, you have to take this class or this course, what if that course isn't offered anymore? Or what if it changes? So we encourage, when you're looking at stuff like this, to stick to domain areas if you can, not exactly take this class from this person, because what if that person doesn't offer the class anymore? You could say you have to get X number of hours in this area. And then where you get it or how you get it is up to the applicant. So it's my understanding that there isn't a lot of this kind of coursework out there. So, I mean, be as specific as you can, keeping in mind what will happen if we adopt and rule that you have to have X, Y, and Z, and X is no longer available. So it might be better to stick to domain names, or say, okay, you need 10 hours in evaluation, clarified, specific enough to make you happy that the person has what they need to do the work, but generic enough that if someone decides to offer the class, someone drops out of offering the class name changes, that you're not stuck, no longer able to qualify people. Just thoughts.
Gotcha.
If it's useful to you.
Yeah, this is Crane. Absolutely, Ann. That's totally what I think that we need to look at. But the ATSA, looking at the ATSA trainings could be a good springboard for, what those are. And like your example, brain development, teenage brain development is definitely something we would want those working with juveniles to have. And they can get that through a non-sex offense specific kind of course. So yeah, go with the domains. I like that.
Yeah, domains are great, and we've had this with some of our other boards. We've had boards that got stuck because, say, the exam for qualification was offered through an organization that went defunct. Well, now what do you do? You're stuck. And so, I mean, you want to be specific, and it's also, you think about bringing providers in from other states, because I get calls a lot of times from other states where they're like, what are you guys doing? Because we have no way to qualify these providers. And so what if they're coming from another state and maybe they got their brain development course in Georgia or North Carolina? And maybe, maybe it was offered through a college rather than an association. So just kind of open your mind to those. How might this information come and how specific do you want to get without creating an unintended consequence of a roadblock or an association that goes bust? Or if you adopt something in rule and the association that puts it on changes its name, we have to go back into rule and update the name. So, just all of those little, just kind of think about, and then what? That's really, really helpful when you guys are putting this list together. And then if we want to have like a RAC, a rules advisory group, or a work group, whatever you want to call it, look at what you came up with, that'd be great. Or we can put it in possible rulemaking and throw it out to everyone, providers, everyone on the interested party list, and say, what do you think? So based on what you come back with, we can decide where that information needs to go next. Does that make sense?
That sounds great.
Terrific. Well, we didn't have any more questions on that. Miss Kelly Chimenti sent me an email regarding intern supervision. Kelly, do you want to outline that for the board and bring everybody up to speed? That is why not just because I like to send, copious materials, why you have the statutes and the rules in front of you today. It's because Ms. Chimenti had some discussions regarding supervision, and I wanted you to be able to refer to what we have in rule and let that inform our conversation. So take it away, Ms. Chimenti.
Yeah, so during COVID, the statute says for providing supervision, so as a certified clinical level, you are allowed to supervise any of the other levels, or you're allowed to supervise any of the other levels of certification. So, and the other way of looking at it is a certified clinical has to be, if you have a supervisor, all of the other levels require supervision, and you have to get supervision from a certified clinical level. So, and there are some very, very clear language in the statute about what that supervision requires. One of the things that it says in statute is it needs to be, I think it says it needs to be in person. I'm looking to see where it is listed here. But
are you talking about direct supervision?
Direct supervision. Okay, so
yeah, that's 675, 365.
Okay. 375 or 675, 368. Is that it? B?
No, it is 675, 365. Direct supervision.
375, 65.
Bracket 6.
Yeah, it's number 6. A minimum number of hours of supervision by a certified clinical sexual offense therapist required under. So direct supervision just talks about the hours. What it doesn't talk about, Kelly, if this helps you, is what those hours can have to look like. If you're talking about direct clinical contact and the client and the supervisor and the supervisee are all working together, as long as it's live, it doesn't say anything about that it can't be on a HIPAA compliant teleconference.
Okay.
Does that help?
Absolutely. So that was the concern is what does the direct mean? Does that mean that it needs to be in person or not? And so there was concerns brought to my attention about that. And I was like, ooh, that's a good question. So, okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be in person. It just means live, basically.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask you all as the experts is what are you looking to get out of that supervision? What are the key components? Are you watching the supervisee work with the client? Is it something where, you all have to be kind of looking at each other at the same time? Or and you need to tell me this, is the supervisee working with the client, say, and it's recorded like we do or whatever on Teams, do you then step in and say, wait, no, you shouldn't have answered that question, or be careful? Or, I mean, what are you trying to get out of your supervision?
Well, supervision is not necessarily sitting in on the direct sessions of the supervisee.
Okay.
And Bill, I know you've done a lot of supervision too, so if you want to step in too, but
Yes, please.
supervision is not sitting in session with my supervisee and the client.
Mm-hmm.
Supervision is usually a separate meeting where you discuss and you go through client files, you go through go through their case list and discuss the issues that come up around that. But you can do that direct where you're sitting in on sessions. Absolutely, that could and should be part of some of that, but it's definitely not, where you're in the session necessarily. Bill, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would suggest that it depends on the level of the supervisee. If you have a person who is very early in the process of being trained, then the supervision needs to be more intensive. So that might include video taping or sessions, or sitting in on sessions where you really do have a more hands-on directive approach. If you have a person who's seasoned a little bit more and is really looking for more case consultation kinds of input, then the model that I hear Kelly describing is probably more appropriate. But for people who are just starting out in a field, I think it's pretty important to be as hands-on as you can possibly be. I think particularly with the kinds of clients we deal with that may be resistant, litigious, that kind of thing, a newbie can get into difficulty very easily in that environment. So I guess I would add that you have to see it as a spectrum based on the needs of the trainee. I think all of us, even when you've been in practice for 40 plus years, I still go down the hall sometimes and collar a colleague and say, if you were in this situation, what would you do?
Yeah.
And that's a level, but we don't need to start with, am I leaning forward in the chair and making eye contact, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So, I think you have to have a more comprehensive view of it. It's not simply consultation.
So with the spectrum of supervision, and I think maybe that's why it's good that your statutes outline hours, because they say as long as those hours are met, you do have some leeway as a clinician and as a provider to provide appropriate supervision for that level of up-and-coming provider. It doesn't say how it needs to happen. So with what you've heard, Kelly, and what we've learned, does that answer your questions? Are there more ways you want to explore the supervision piece of it?
No, that totally answers the question. My concern was that direct supervision meant in person. And so I was concerned about that, especially with COVID and everything. And
sure.
So yeah, that completely answers the question, and it answers the question that I had. So thank you for the time.
Of course, this is your time. I can say with different provider types, if you've got somebody who is a behavior analyst or somebody with a different kind of mental health license, direct supervision looks very different for every single license that I know about. So there might be some confusion out there if someone's a licensed clinical social worker and they also do something else. The phrase direct supervision could mean something totally different from the SOTB. So that's where some of these questions come, and it's great to go over it, especially when you have interns coming into the game and we have COVID and we have all this technology now. So it's a great time to revisit these things. It's important stuff. So was there anything else under policy?
Well,
I'm sorry?
Could I add to that?
Of course.
A lot
Please.
of the boards have established criteria for what constitutes a supervisor. And
Yes.
they actually have some coursework along that line, because it really is learning to be a teacher to a certain degree, as well as a clinician. So I think that might be, I'm not suggesting that we take immediate action on that, but just to throw that in the hopper of things the board might want to tackle down the road. Do we want to help supervision along by prescribing what that might look like in our particular situation?
Now, Dr. Davis, that's a great point, because again, some of our other professions have supervisors that actually have to be certified. There's a separate certification that you get, or a registration to be a supervisor, and you have to take certain courses, and if a person wants supervision, they have to go to an approved supervisor. Are you looking at something that formal, or are you looking more like support teaching tools?
Well, I'm just suggesting that it might be something that we look at. How rigid or structured or formal we make it would be something I think the whole board would have to discuss and decide. But I know that there's a lot of times when supervision is really informal, and people call it supervision. And we need to ask ourselves if we feel like we need to do quality control on that at some point. And I'm not sure I'm here to dictate the answer to that. I'm just going to raise the question.
Yeah, this is Chimenti. I completely agree, Bill. I mean, I know, in order to be a supervisor for any of the licensing boards, professional licensing boards, you have to take, I think it's a minimum of 30 hours of training in clinical supervision. And then you have to get regular CEUs, continuing ed, to keep that status. And so I think that'd be a great idea to look into requiring people that are offering supervision some level of formalized education, or around being a supervisor. I think that's a great idea. And you're right. I mean, there's nothing that anybody has to do. It's like once you're a clinical level, all of a sudden you're okayed to be a supervisor. And so, like Bill says, it is a very it's a separate skill, obviously, than being a practitioner, direct therapist. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Maybe we could, this is Howell, maybe we could think about, instead of rewriting the whole thing, that the supervisors need to be approved supervisors within their own clinical. Like I'm an LCSW, and so I would have to be approved LCSW supervisor in order to be a SO supervisor.
That's a good idea. That might be, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is that something that you would like me to kind of do some? I'm not sure when we go into like the statutes, what we can and can't do within the statutes. I usually need to refer to, go to DOJ, and I don't know how long it would take for DOJ to help me with that. Is that something that you would like me to kind of send out some feelers on, and we can talk about at the May meeting?
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could do that.
Okay, so some quality control on supervisors. What might our statutes allow us to do?
Yeah. And if the statute could reflect something about, people that are already supervising for their licensing board, being qualified to provide supervision in this realm.
Yeah, maybe we could look at if we have, again, we have to operate within the framework of our statutes. If that's something that our statutes might allow us to do a separate section and rule and kind of maybe flesh out what, even though you can be, in the statutes it says you have to be supervised by a clinical, if we have the flexibility to maybe do a separate section and rule, maybe outlining with the aim toward quality control. Is that am I capturing what you need?
Yeah.
All right, let me see what
if it could be done in rules, it'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let me see what I can find out. Like I said, the DOJ is, man, are they busy. But if that's something that we have the authority to do, well, that's certainly something that we could start fleshing out ourselves. So let me find out for you. Okay, was there anything else under policy? Because Bob wants his seat back. Just saying.
I just had a question. I don't know if it can come up here in policy or for other business, but it just has to do the conversation about telehealth as we move out of the pandemic for this particular board, and requirements, and whether we're seeing other boards put any training standards or setting guidelines for the use of telehealth. I think I'm not trying to say we shouldn't use it because I think it really is applicable, but I don't know that this board's had that conversation, and maybe the others, what if ATSA has had any conversations about use of telehealth for this type of treatment moving forward.
Oh, this is Chimenti. I don't know if there's been any. I think most of the focus around telehealth and providing this treatment is basically looking at pitfalls, looking at how to do it ethically. I don't think there's been enough time for people to kind of put together long-term recommendations about if this is the best way forward, or if we should, comparing and contrasting in-person versus telehealth, or, that's kind of my things, but.
There's certainly, when the conversation about the map of Oregon where there's providers, there's certainly, this could help fill the need. And and obviously to me, there's certain individuals that just, it's not going to work for them, but there's a large cross section that it will. So even if conversations about, is there training for telehealth that someone should go through? Is there, some baseline kind of standards we want to look at in the future? Yeah, I did have a question from a licensing side. I know if someone's a telehealth provider from another that is not located in this state, can they provide services, or would they? Is it based on where the service is provided, where the patient is, or where the provider is?
Good question.
That's a terrific question, and it really comes down to an individual state's statutes. If it, again, and I've had a lot of questions on this, well, I have a client who's moving out of state, can I keep providing to them? Well, I can say, well, in Oregon, you're okay, but what if that person's in California, and California has statutes around who can provide services to the person who lives there? I don't know about that. So it's a really touchy issue, and it depends on where both people are located, and to make it even more complicated, if they're seeking third-party reimbursement, insurance companies might have additional requirements on the provider, the client, and so it's a really murky area. It's a great question, but I wish I had a clearer answer for you.
You have an answer from an Oregon standard for like if the patient is here in Oregon receiving services?
From any state provider?
From any state provider or from our state?
Not from our own, from out of, like if a Washington treatment provider wanted to provide services to a patient in Oregon.
No, they need
No answer.
they need to have an Oregon license to provide services to Oregon people. Because when you think about it, I mean, the way I try to put a lens on it is, what is the point of a license? To public protection. And what does Oregon consider public? Oregon people.
Okay.
So that's a little bit helpful, but yeah, it can get murky.
Yeah, I mean, this is Chimenti. I do know that, people working in Washington, living in Washington, that know that they want to practice in Oregon, which means seeing Oregon clients or working within systems in Oregon, they know they need to be certified or licensed in Oregon in order to do that. But it is a really good question though about when a client goes out of state or, I think the basic understanding from my perspective is, if I'm licensed, like as a licensed social worker, if I want to provide services to clients in a different state, then I need to be licensed in that state. But this certification is a different thing. So it's a different thing. So it's a really good question. I mean,
I also see it as a way to increase potential, our membership, I guess, of our certified associates, potentially.
For sure.
And there's some unique challenges sometimes with individuals that have barriers with language and such that, I see that could help fill too. And that's the whole telehealth side of it too. So.
Absolutely. There's a huge need for especially Spanish speaking providers in our state. It's a really big problem. There's a lot of clients that are just not getting services because there aren't people to provide them. Yeah.
This is Crane, kind of along these lines. I have over the years had numerous contracts to provide services for juveniles that were adjudicated out of state but have moved to Oregon to be courtesy supervised by probation officers in our county. And in those contracts, all of the states, and I've contracted with 4 different states now, have all required that I have a certification that I have that's similar to theirs, and they look at what my certification through SOTB board is compared to theirs before approving any contract.
Yeah, that's like reciprocity. Thank you, Kelly. We have that where people coming from other states might be called something, but they don't just get to walk in and get an Oregon license unless what it takes to be called that in their state is substantially similar to what Oregon requires. You don't get to get a pass in Iowa and then come in here to a profession that requires a master's degree and just get handed a license. They have to be substantially similar. So yes, that is good to know. So are we good with that? Because I think we're on to public comment, right? Okay, I'm gonna let Bob go back to driving. He just gets so anxious when I'm in the driver's seat. I don't blame him. There's no one?
She just likes to talk. I mean, she likes talking with people. So, all right, that was very interesting from the regulatory standpoint to listen to that conversation, especially when talking about direct supervision, indirect supervision, and all that. So, I was sitting there learning. Okay, so we don't have any public members on the line. And so we'll go to other board business, and Kelly had something else to add?
I did, just a couple of announcements. The first one is just to let everyone know that OSOTN is going to put on their conference next year, which is exciting. And the second one is just to let, the second one is to let this board know, and I think I might have mentioned this before, that there is a group of therapists who work with juveniles who have been meeting under the title of a therapist summit once a month. And the first thing that group has been working on is some standardizations around polygraphs for juveniles, what their purpose is, the therapeutic purpose, when is it appropriate, when it's not appropriate, some standardization of the forms that are used, as well as some research around the efficacy of them, the reasons for using them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is being organized through Keith Ovalman with Higher Ground, with all of these different therapists that are contributing. And he's putting together a white paper around this, this question around polygraphs that at some point they will want to be bringing to the SOTB board to review and to see whether or not the SOTB board would be supporting it and even possibly putting it into rules or whatever. We'll get to that when that's finalized. But I just wanted to make the board aware of that. So there. If anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
And just as a reminder, if you do have questions, please, about this after the meeting, please go through Ann, have to go to Kelly so we don't have several emails and then end up having an ex officio board meeting unintentionally. So yeah, please use Ann as a conduit. All right. Any other board business? All right. Kelly Chimenti, ma'am, you have a script to take us out of the board meeting?
I sure do. The Sexual Offense Treatment Board meeting is adjourned at 10:25 a.m.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for putting up with us this morning.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll miss everyone. It was fun.